so much of our suffering and struggling, whether you're going through something hard or not, is all about wishing that life were different than it is.
Yes.
It's all about that. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, when you can just be in life and just accept, even if you're having a low day, it's just like maybe I didn't sleep well, or, who knows why. You don't even have to have a why. Maybe you're just feeling low. It's okay to just be low. I think the fear that people have is that they're always going to be that way. The same fear that people have in grief. Well, if I allow myself to cry, I'll never stop crying.
Right, right, right.
And those are just things that are illusions that we tell
Yes.
ourselves. It's all very illusion oriented when we tell ourselves a story that we buy into. And I think the key is just to catch yourself in the act,
Yes.
just like catch yourself doing it and go, oh, whoops, there I go again.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'll be speaking with Kristine Carlson. Kristine Carlson is co-author with her late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, of the New York Times bestselling Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books. She will be featured this fall as the subject of a biopic Lifetime movie based on her book, Heartbroken Open, a true story of coming alive again after profound loss. So, for the people who don't know who you are, even though you're very well known, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your story and how you got into doing the work that you do?
Sure. So I'm probably most known for my work with my late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series. He really was a pioneer in the field of psychology, as you know,
Yeah,
and
I do.
and I had the great honor of working alongside him while he was alive. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff was his 10th book. So it was like your typical overnight success story. It took about 10 years for him to really hit his mark in the world with that book. But the greater body of his work came earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a number of books that were very profound to psychology early on, and probably very much in alignment with the work that you do.
Yes.
And yeah, and so we had really wonderful marriage. We worked together. We have two daughters together. We were just living our lives, and 10 years after Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, about 22 years into our marriage, Richard got on a plane, and on the descent of the flight, he had a pulmonary embolism that ended his life. And it was very sudden. We really didn't have any warning that really, for the most part, anything was wrong. I know he wasn't feeling well for a couple of days before, but it wasn't anything that we felt was, life threatening, just felt like the flu or something. So,
Right.
yeah. So, during that time, one could say we were at the pinnacle of our lives in midlife. And I have to say that, gosh, I mean, I really didn't even know like how much more awake I could live until after that happened. But
Right.
I never had really suffered like that and gone through such tremendous grief. And the realization I had was that my grief had really cracked me wide open to discovering actually more of who I am and being more of who I am in this lifetime, and also cracked me open to just a really immeasurable amount of wisdom. And I think that what I've noticed over the years is that suffering and going through something traumatic and calling on all your strength, your own personal strength of
Yes.
faith and resilience, really has that capacity to expand us and to allow our awareness to grow versus allow us to shrink and become
Yes.
bitter and smaller.
Definitely. But isn't it a function of how you meet meet it, as opposed to some people when trauma happens of any kind, there's this big no in a fight, and then other people do what you did, which is allow it to carry you to where you needed to be. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I think there's a real pivot in your choice that you make, and I'm not sure everyone makes it consciously. I know I did. I made a conscious choice to not allow this defining moment of my life, which believe me, it was defining. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm sure.
it was highly defining. I didn't let it define me in the sense of I was going to become a victim of this first really horrible thing that had happened in my life. And
Yes.
I think that's the choice is we don't get to choose what happens to us a lot of times, but we do get to choose how we step into our lives and how we choose to heal and move forward.
Yeah. Lester, my original mentor, used to say that the events of life are not something that we choose or control, but what we do have the opportunity to do in any moment is wake up to what's really true as opposed to what appears to be. I'm paraphrasing, but that's something he used to say.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I don't know what that is and why some people do and why some people don't. Maybe it's the journey we're on, the individual journey, the consciousness that we live in, I mean, I kind of have this deep belief that our soul really is in charge and that we will the soul will get honored in this lifetime no matter what. And you know and you're gonna, everybody's gonna go about that soul path in a different way.
Yes, yes. Well, again, who knows who or what is in control, but it's certainly obvious that the conscious mind isn't always.
No, for sure. I mean, when fear takes hold, fear is fear. Fear tends to run
Yes,
with its own path, and that's tough. It's a tough thing. We all have to meet our fears in life, and I like to think of fear as more of a navigational tool than anything. When I feel fear, I think, "Oh, that's just that part of my mind, that ego that's just getting the best of me in this moment." And I'm just listening a little louder to that voice than my true nature, which is much softer and much more like a whisper, more like a deep feeling of peace.
yes, definitely. There is a profound difference between, I don't know if it's to what we're listening to, or but maybe it's how the listening is showing up. Because I think we're often tuned to the loudest noise or the most traumatic, the most jarring thing in our environment, but it's all just appearing in that same field. So
That's right.
yeah, that's beautiful. So now the work, I am sure, has evolved since you've continued to carry it. How has it evolved? How has it evolved to where it is today?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of people felt was missing from maybe Richard's repertoire of work was the conversation about loss.
Yes.
And it was very much about how to practice a healthy life and, live your best life and, well, how not to sweat the small stuff, how to
Right,
keep
which is
how to keep life in perspective.
which is a key learning. That's a universal thing that's useful for sure.
Yeah, and I think now what I've done is tried to show that the same principles that apply to healthy psychological functioning in life when you're going on the joyride, they apply to loss as well.
Yes.
And yet, I've always tried to say that, the truth is when you're living through something big, you get instant perspective about the small stuff. The small
Yes.
stuff becomes very, very small.
That's true.
Yeah, and I know for myself that was really clear, like the things that I might have been annoyed at or the conversations that might have annoyed me before Richard died never even touched my radar after he died and still haven't since. So,
Yes.
and I think that's how I think that's how I've expanded our work is by opening the conversation to healing and feeling, and that it's okay to, really, really okay to be in grief.
Yes.
That grief is more of a healer than an enemy. And I think so much of our culture wants to rush people through grief, and rather than just allow grief to be where it is and
Yes.
heal you and just be with it. It's painful. It's a painful time to be in grief, but crying and emoting that grief is very important. It's very healthy.
Yes. However, whatever form it takes, is the thing about emotion is if there's a denying it or a fighting it, it it just it kind of twists on itself. Whereas seeing it as just a natural part of life and a natural part of the unfolding of all that is makes it much easier to deal with whatever is coming up, and can even feel less like a dealing with, just part of what's happening.
Absolutely. I love to just look to nature, for the best example, and children too. I mean,
Yes.
children are such the best example of presence and being present with what is and whatever they're feeling and allowing it to just leave. I mean, I think
Right.
that's the healthy part is like go through it and let it leave.
Right, right, right.
Try and shorten your distance of how long you stay in it by just allowing it to, to be present and I mean the word emote says it all, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's emotions are just energy in motion, and
Exactly.
and we try to steer it as opposed to just being the water that the wave is flowing through. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Our work is very much about uh, welcoming and allowing, and and it is just it's what's natural. Yeah, I love you mentioned children, because if you watch young children, they can have a knockdown, drag out fight and say, "I'm never going to speak to you again," and 10 minutes later, it's like it never happened. It just
Yeah.
it just disappears.
Yeah.
And nature too. You mentioned nature. Nature is exquisitely beautiful in that it is just how it is. Animals are just how they are. They don't have this overlay that we as human beings put on it, that this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. This needs to be different than the way it is. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that so much of our suffering and struggling, whether you're going through something hard or not, is all about wishing that life were different than it is. It's
Yes.
it's all about that. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, when you can just be in life and just accept, even if you're having a low day, it's just like maybe you didn't sleep well, or, who knows why. You don't even have to have a why. Maybe you're just feeling low. It's okay to just be low. I think the fear that people have is that they're always going to be that way. Like
Yes.
the same fear that people have in grief. Well, if I allow myself to cry, I'll never stop crying.
Right, right, right.
And those are just things that are kind of, I would like to say, just illusions that we tell
Yes.
ourselves. It's all very illusion oriented when we tell ourselves a story that we buy into. And kind of like, I think the key is just to catch yourself in the act,
Yes.
just like catch yourself doing it and go, oh, whoops. There I go again. We can have some fun with that.
Absolutely. Having fun with it is the key. And yes, sometimes it's as simple as just seeing, oh, that's that pattern again. Not, oh, that's that pattern again. Bad. Oh, that's the pattern again.
I was working with somebody the other day, and he was saying, that he, just he's trying really, really working at kind of rewiring the way he thinks, and
Yes.
it's a whole lifetime he's had thinking a certain way, so it's
Yes, yes.
quite challenging.
Yes.
And And I made the comment to him. I go, well, one thing I used to do when I was younger was when I remember when I had to do that, and I was much younger. I was in my 20s or even maybe 19, and I learned to meditate, and I started to realize how crazy my mind was and
Right.
how busy and crazy and just crazy it was. And so I started to just say, and I think I might have gotten this from Florence Scovel Shinn. Do you remember her?
I
The
don't.
the the author of The Game of Life.
Oh, I do remember the book. Yeah.
Well, she was just incredible, just a pioneer of the times. Like, talk about knowing the secret. She was like wrote this book in 1920, and it altered my total existence. But one of the things she said is, when you catch yourself in the act of negative thinking, just say, oh, cancel that, or have a little saying that you say to yourself that says, just stop there. And but then my friend kind of improved on that. When I told him that, he said, well, because he's been meditating and learning, more transcendental meditation, he said, well, I think that sounded so abrupt to me, like almost like I was telling myself I was
Oh,
doing
yeah.
something
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
wrong.
You're
So
wrong.
I said, yeah. So he said, I think I started to just say, oh, just gently embrace it. Like, just gently, like you said, welcome it and just
Yeah.
embrace it and be with it.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, you just improved on what I told you. So you're already turning into the teacher. So
Well, isn't that how it is? One of the things I've noticed, I've been doing this now since 1976. One of the things I've noticed is the deepest learnings are just what gets called forth when you're talking with someone else who's come to you for assistance.
yeah,
Have you found
absolutely.
that too? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because it's not just about your experience any longer. It's about you connecting to their experience. So it's that beautiful symbiosis that occurs when you do that. It's like this, I become you and you become me. And for that moment, your experience is my experience. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
That's one of the beautiful things about supporting apparent others is that lack of boundary that develops. And it's not, there's a lot of confusion, I believe, about you must maintain your boundaries. That's true. And those boundaries on a deep level are imaginary. They're
they are.
and that they break down when you're just being, and there is, which is always happening, but when that becomes a little more conscious, what also can happen is that the sense of other dissolves in that.
Yeah, I find that to be one of the most beautiful feelings, when you have that kind of connection with, yeah, with anyone. And
Yes.
also, I find that connection when I am in a highly creative space, and
Yes.
the same kind of connection when that funnel of spirit and inspiration just comes and it flows through. It's the same kind of thing. It's like you're such an open vessel that you don't have that boundary, which is what allows for
Yes.
such beautiful
Yes.
creativity.
Absolutely. And it how it feels on this end is that when the more there's an absence of the whatever you want to call it, but the sense of meanness, the more there's just this openness to whatever is in the moment. And it could be look like creativity. It could look like um, playing a sport better. It could look so many different ways. Or it could just be walking in nature. You mentioned nature earlier. That's another place where a lot of us experience that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what is there something from your work, or it doesn't matter from when in your work because you have a whole pedigree, but something that you think you might want to share with our viewers and listeners that you think they could? I mean, actually, the whole conversation's been beautiful. I'm sure the things from that the people can take away from. But is anything more specific you'd like to share?
Well, I guess if you think about, more like teaching tools, I would say, I mean, yes, and what we've been talking about is the most helpful of anything, I feel, because the truth is, I mean, you can set out to learn all sorts of tools and
Yes.
things, but the reality is that when you can be with life the way we're talking about, that's all you ever need. I mean, that is
Right.
all you ever need. But it isn't just, you don't just get there. I mean, maybe some people do. I actually believe there are people that are born that way, and
Yes.
then
Yes.
they don't have the childhood or the traumas or the things that, encumber them to become other than how they are. But I
Yes.
think most of us go on this journey from ourselves, away from ourselves, back to ourselves.
Right. Which is kind of funny because means she's never gone anywhere.
Right? No, and you haven't gone very far either.
Right, right,
So,
right, right, right.
but I think once you realize that it's really a return to the self, no matter what it is you go through in
Yes,
life,
yes,
that,
yes.
and then, so how do you do that? How do you get there? And I always say, well, you can resist what is, or you can surrender to it.
Yes.
And so I'm wearing my star sweater. I have many star sweaters, but I like the star as an acronym because for me, it's surrender, trust, accept, release, and receive. So
Yeah.
surrender to what is, trust in the divine, accept what is, release what you need to detach from and let go of, and then receive the present moment.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a great acronym.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like a northern star. You can remember that: surrender, trust, accept, release, and receive.
Yeah, yeah. I resonate with all four, with all five of those.
Yeah, yeah, and then of course the five-pointed star is such a beautiful symbol of surrender too, of
Yes.
openness.
Openness. Yes, yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
complete openness. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's
thank
beautiful.
you.
And do you have any specific tips for any of the points of the star?
Well, yes, of course.
I thought you might.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, surrender out of all of them and trust is probably the act that might be the most challenging to most. And
Yes,
I think the reason why is because some people think of surrender as a weak link or a weakness or giving up or giving in, and that's not what, in these terms, that's not what surrender is. Surrender is an opening. That is the open place to the portal of peace that you're looking for, to the portal of coming back to yourself in a really beautiful way. And so when you have a difficult time with surrender, I just what I do is I just repeat over and over again a mantra in my mind, and I just say surrender, trust, and accept. Surrender, trust, and accept. And I do a lot of, breathing. When I was in grief, I would lay on the floor in a spread eagle and I would allow my body to surrender because I realized that my body was going to teach me how to grieve.
yes,
And I would
yes,
look for the tightness in my body and I would jiggle it, or I would tell myself to let that go. And then my tears would come,
yes,
and when my tears would come, sometimes my screams would come. And then
yes, yes, yes.
I'd get up, dust myself off. And what did I feel? But I felt bliss. I felt
Right.
total bliss. I'm like, okay, there we go. The
Yeah,
brain totally rewards you
yeah,
for
yeah.
doing what's right. And the body does too.
Yes,
And so, I think that surrender is the place that you have to be, like, to really open to what we're talking about. And even surrendering it, we've all had like great days and we've all had bad days, like
absolutely. Yeah.
surrendering to a bad day, just saying, oh, well, maybe the day's going to get better if I don't fight this so hard,
Right, right, right.
like if I'm just in it and I just know that this too shall pass, then I can surrender to it. It's just like being in traffic. Richard used to love that analogy so much because there's very little that any of us can do about traffic. But you can surrender to the fact that you're in traffic. So you turn on the radio, you think about, well, maybe I can listen to a podcast. Like I can listen to Hal. Next time you're in traffic, listen to Hal. Your traffic will be so much better. But you just surrender to where you are and you're in it. And then trust just has to do with flexing those faith muscles, like asking yourself to trust where you are, to trust that life will hold you, that
Yes.
everything's in this moment is going to be okay. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I say that to myself. It's going to be okay, Chris. It's really going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Sometimes you have to say that a lot before you believe it, but
Right,
you
right,
know, you
right.
can you can keep telling yourself. So how you talk to yourself and the kind of language you use and the kind of self-compassion that you bring
Yeah,
is very,
compassion is
very,
important.
very,
Yes.
very important. Yeah, compassion is really just an act of love, of self-love, and
Yes.
of love for others. So I think those are some tips that I know it all seems very in the air, but it's so much, I think, of life is about mindset, and it's about being able to work with yourself in that way, really
Yes.
to be able to do the inner work. And I wish I could say I always had it all figured out. I don't. I mean, I
Well, I think
definitely
that's a
have my
good thing.
moments. Yeah, I have my moments, and I'm I'm really good like 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time I'm in it like everyone else and still working on it and going, "Oh God, that really pissed me off what that person said."
Yeah, but isn't there also this acceptance that develops where even at the worst moments, there's this inner knowingness that this too shall pass, or this is how it's appearing to happen in this moment, and you've experienced enough to know, well, so what?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's kind of how how quickly can you gain perspective when you've lost perspective,
Yes.
and it's not just a head thing, it's a heart thing. It's kind of a communication, I think, that happens between the head and the heart.
Yes, yes.
It's a yeah, it's been an openness in within you to be human too, just to be
Oh,
human.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
And isn't it also that when you really surrender, the head and the heart spontaneously uh, just find a harmony between the two, and it almost feels on some level like the mind kind of surrenders to the heart or opens to the heart.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's so much research now that shows that too, that the heart actually has brain cells.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so the other it has to be there's this connection, this emotional connection between the head and the heart and how you feel and all of it. Yes. A relationship.
Right.
A marriage.
Yes, absolutely, both. Hopefully a good relationship or a good marriage.
Exactly. One
Yeah,
that one that you can always work on.
that's true. But also, if there's just like a marriage or a relationship, if there's an honoring and a caring for the other one and an openness to the other point of view, uh, there's automatically more harmony and more spaciousness and more the ability to just be yourself in that relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Wholeheartedly.
Yes.
We're gonna just laugh the rest of the time,
We
everyone.
could. Oh, I love to laugh, and it's 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 just a reflection. Honestly, in my experience, it is just a reflection of spontaneous letting go. When true laughter happens, there's a relief in it, and a release in it, and an openness in it, which is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of the best medicines in the entire world. That and
Yes,
crying.
yes,
Laughter and tears, best
yes.
medicines.
And sometimes they come together.
They do.
I'm sure you had times when you were in the middle of that experience where you'd be really deep in the grief, and then all of a sudden you find yourself giggling.
Oh my gosh. We went to my girlfriends and I, two of my best girlfriends, went to pick up Richard's. We'll pick out, I guess we are picking out we're taking care of, like, his body was in New York and we had to pick
Yes,
out the box he was going to come home in because he
yes,
was
yes.
going to be cremated and all that. And here we are, it's not a week since he's been gone. And we're in this this dark, like dreary, like just total, what the kind of environment that you might expect with almost plastic furniture and
Right, right,
kind of
right.
this yellow green wall and everything was and then this guy comes out and he's got this carrot top head and he's pretty overweight and he's sweaty and he's got this short sleeve shirt, but it's January and it's untucked, and he comes out in a disheveled mess and he's just very frenetic. And my girlfriends and I just looked at him, and as soon as we could barely hold it together, we wanted
Right.
to start laughing so hard, like this can't be happening, just those situations where you spontaneously just start laughing because there's nothing else you can do.
Right, 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 right. It's the goddess's escape valve, which is already built into the system.
Yeah. Even in times when you don't think
Oh,
it's appropriate, it doesn't
right,
matter.
especially then.
Like church or something.
Oh, right.
In church.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's supposed yeah, churches, synagogues, mosques are temples. They're supposed to be very serious places.
Yep.
I think if there is a god or a goddess, he or she or it is laughing all the time,
Oh
especially
yeah.
at our seriousness.
Oh yeah. I've always liked to pretend that what would a Martian in space looking down at us say about how we live? Like, I'm sure I always think of, if you think of God as a patriarchal figure every now and then, like how I grew up, then I always think he's looking at us saying that. Oh my God, really? You're really doing that? How are you really living that way? Clearly, really? Oh, I can't believe this. How much of a mess can you make this?
Yeah, that's great. So, anything else from the body of work that you have? It's such a broad body of work. I mean, even just reminding people don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah,
And
right.
I saw this T-shirt years and years ago. On the front, it says, "Don't sweat the small stuff," and on the back, it said, "Everything is small stuff."
Yeah, yeah. That's the saying. Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's just such a really Buddhist way to live if you think about it. So Zen,
Yes,
just
totally.
very, very, live in the present moment. Don't get knocked off course too easily. Just accept life as it is, live from your heart, live in kindness. These are all, like, I think Richard and I always realize that no matter how different people
Mhm.
are what we want from life is very similar
Mm,
all around the world, and
totally.
yeah, and what we want is a loving, hopefully, love in our lives, acceptance. We want our family and friends to be healthy and happy. We'd probably, everyone would love to have a roof over their heads and
Yes.
clean water to drink and a toilet to flush and
Right.
heat when we need heat, and food when we need food, and all those things that we value, kindness, and you know then there's like the deeper level of things that you want or want to be, and that's generous, and you know loving, and um, all those things. So
Yes. But again, if people, the star that you talked about, which I would repeat the five again for everybody, but that star that you talk about, isn't that a key for those deeper qualities emerging?
yes, absolutely, because all of those deeper qualities emerge the more present that you are with life, right? I mean,
Yes.
because that's just, I mean, again, I go back to nature, if you look at a tree and how a tree lives, it's just a tree, it's a
Yes.
tree living in the elements. And we're kind of like that in our own lives. We're in our lives, but we're the tree, and I think it's easy to forget that the fundamentals of human nature are pretty simple,
Yes.
and we complicate things a lot.
A lot. Yes.
Yes, we have very crazy stories we tell ourselves that complicate our lives. And
Yes, yes. And the tree has no story about growing, it just grows. It has
no,
it has it has no shame or blame or anger or fear or frustration. It just it's growing and it
like
doesn't
my
have.
dog too. My dog's like
Yes.
that too.
Yes.
He's just being a dog and being
Right.
his best dog.
Right. Well, he doesn't even he doesn't even have the concept like we all do of best and worst. It's just
No.
it's dog it's it's beingness dogging or
Yes.
tree uh, beingness treeing.
Yeah, that's right. It's just beingness. Isn't it just so interesting to it's interesting to say that to somebody that's in a place of suffering, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the hardest thing to do is to tell somebody something like that when they're in a like panic attack, or they're,
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I had a lot of experience trying to tell my kids that during different times like that.
Yeah.
Didn't work too well.
Right, 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 right. Well, in those times, you just show up and you let the people be the way they are. And if you
Yep.
have tools you can share, you share the tools. And otherwise, you just love them as they are.
And that's the key, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key, is just loving them as they are and exempling that,
Yes.
that if you can maintain your own inner sense of equanimity, and maintain that sense of who you are in peace, that's going to impact somebody a lot greater than the words that you bring or anything that you can
Absolutely.
say. Yeah, it's very contagious.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. It really is. And you certainly bring that.
So do you. I've calmed down immeasurably just since I've been talking to you today.
The feeling's quite mutual. It's really been a pleasure having this conversation. Really,
Oh, you too. You're just such a lovely man. Really, really lovely. I'm so happy to know you and to meet you. And
likewise,
yeah.
likewise, likewise. So, is there anything that you want to tell our audience about? Do you have anything going on that you want to share?
Oh, yeah. No, just they can find out all about me at my website, KristineCarlson.com or Don'tSweat.com. There's several different things on there that people might be interested in, and they might not, but they'll probably enjoy reading anyways. So
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
And everyone listening will have all this in the show notes. So, wow, this has been fun. I really enjoyed it. You're just a light and a joy to be around, and I can tell that you're living your work, which is beautiful.
Thank you, Hal. You too. I feel that about you too. It really resonated today very beautifully. Thank you
Yes.
so much with all my heart.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Kristine Carlson. You can learn more about Kristine at KristineCarlson.com. That's KristineCarlson.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona Method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's SEDONA.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.